this is a different type of card. This is a more advanced, definitely for those people who like obsessive compulsive detail, but it's super fun. So I'm going to show you how you can take some simple shapes and then give yourself something to work on. These are some leftover cards, one that I'm making for myself. That's a bigger size, and this is a smaller version. I started with a drawing. I just maybe made a little bit of a sketch and tried to break that into just a few pieces. And by the layering, which I'm going to show you in a second, you can turn into something that looks like this. Now, it doesn't happen instantly, but I think with just a few pieces, you end up with something where you can really play and add that detail that makes your heart happy. So first of all, I don't use Timtex. I start with a blank that is muslin or calico if you're not in the US, and it's got a layer of batting, and then I use something called buckram, and that's B-U-C-K-R-A-M. Crinoline will also work, but for those of you who do needlepoint, it gives you a little stiffer canvas, and it has a little grid so your needle falls through. Very easy to stitch. You can continue to use the products that they've reviewed in other sections, but it's a little harder on your hand. So I start with my picture. This picture isn't exactly, because these are the pieces I've left. Actually, this is more this piece. And so I might use something as a sky. One option would be a cotton broadcloth that you can get. Another option would be layers of silk. This is silk organza fused back to broadcloth. If you're going to fuse, I strongly recommend using natural silk, because using polyester doesn't go so well with a hot iron, so I stick with silks. Then I'm going to have something that will be a water layer. This piece is going to end up looking a little more like that. And so this is another piece of silk that's fused. Now I've got some pieces that cut that might work very well for some ground. Granted, this isn't exactly cut. This is done just for this purposes, but it gives you a rough idea of how quickly this will start to come together and look like a landscape. One of my favorite tricks is, a while back, I bought a striped fabric and I made little rolls, usually in front of the TV, maybe with a cup of tea or a glass of wine, depending on the day. And I just fill in some lines that make it look like aspen. Let's set those there, imagining that these pieces were cut a little bit better. Actually, the obsessive in me is coming out because I have to be able to arrange that to keep working on this. Now that we have some trees, let's put some foliage. One option would be some pieces of felt that were cut and layered for foliage. Fine, but a little redundant. What if we use some beautiful wools and create an aspen look? This piece is done with organza. French knots are incredible laid on this when you're doing foliage. I realized I left out the mountains, and if I'm in Sisters, I can't forget the mountains. So we're going to step back. We're going to add a layer. That gives us this mountain view. Add our trees back. Add just a little foliage, and maybe a rock or two. If I had cut this perfectly to lay out for all of this, then I could have all my pieces right like that, iron it down or tack it down, and then you're ready to do all this embroidery. That's the fun part. Now, mountains. Mountains have been a real challenge. One of the reasons I do mountains is because, and it's our landscape, that's an amazing backdrop, but it's hard to get snow on top of felt. Frankly, it's a challenge, or even broadcloth. So I have a few tricks. First of all, this is white felt that's been topped with a white or iridescent acrylic paint, and then fused down with an iron in a well-ventilated area. And you definitely want to make sure you put a layer of something on there before you put your iron on top of the paint, but it makes it tight enough. Otherwise, the felt just comes in pieces. The other thing that I've started doing is, rather than working in felt, I've started painting fabric. So you could see that this might give us that backdrop if I were to lay it in appropriate fashion. I have taken an odd fabric, a hand dye, scrunched it with white paint, and then come back and cut the shape of our north sister and our middle sister right like that. And then all of a sudden you can start to turn something very simply that was felt before and now create a mountain landscape. I usually make a bunch of these at the same time. I mean, this isn't quite laid out right. This piece is not exactly designed for that. You're going to use your imagination. But I make a bunch because I'm highly critical of myself, and I go back and look at all those little white pieces, and then later, when I finally decide that I'm brave enough to cut them, yes, lo and behold, they do look like mountains. And I am a big push for doing work like this because it's so meditative and allows you to explore what works in a landscape, what draws your eye through, and then how you can add the pockets of joy.